Hey guys, Chandy here, and welcome to my channel. For this video, we'll be having a look at The Dead and Furious. Released in 2007 by Virgin Play and developed by Dream On Studios, Dead and Furious is a rail shooter horror game. Unlike rail shooters at the arcades where you point a gun peripheral at the screen to shoot the baddies, you just simply tap the enemies on screen using the stylus. Hence why the US version, aptly titled Touch the Dead, makes a whole lot more sense. Yup. Very similar to that time when the Australian distributors changed the name of the 2004 rom-com 13 Going on 30 to Suddenly 30. Makes sense, doesn't it? So our story begins with our protagonist Rob Steiner, according to the box art, who is wrongfully convicted of murder. He then wakes to find his cell door inexplicably open, and this is where the fun starts. After picking up the weapon, which is the starter pistol, we immediately encounter our first wave of zombies. Now, let's quickly get into the controls. While the tutorial is shown through a separate menu in slideshow form, the controls become simple enough to follow. You see an enemy, you tap on the touchscreen to shoot them, easy enough. To reload, you touch and drag the ammunition over to reload. Sounds cool. As intuitive as these controls are, they certainly aren't the most responsive, especially when it comes to reloading. Since the ammo icon is located at the very edge of the screen, I often found that the gun wasn't reloaded properly, just due to the touchscreen sensitivity. It becomes extremely tricky once enemy numbers become more and more numerous. Trust me, I lost a lot of health mostly due to not being able to reload properly or quickly enough. It's even harder since the pistol will be the only weapon you have at this stage in the game. Once you have progressed enough through the prison stage, our hero Rob is suddenly surrounded, notices a manhole, jumps through it, and we enter our next stage, the sewers. You know shit's about to hit the fan once we reach a sewer level, and like all hardcore retro gamers out there, sewer levels are complete and utter fucking garbage. I don't know if sewer levels are contractual obligations for a lot of game studios, but yeah. This has got to be one of the worst levels by far. You'll be spending the majority of the level with Rob running through long hallways without stopping, filled with enemies. I found this especially frustrating as your reload speed hasn't improved at this point. So, the best method for this was to use headshots and shoot before they can activate their striking animation. Once the hallways are done, you end up reaching a ladder and it's raining rats. Hallelujah. The developers must have been aware of how much we gamers love sewer levels, because after that, we climb the ladder and reach what appears to be a mess hall and grab the shotgun. Now, this is when the gameplay becomes a lot more interesting, and the difficulty spike thankfully becomes a lot more balanced. While the touchscreen is used to interact with the environment, i.e. shooting shit, the directional pad, or buttons if you're left-handed, is used to swap between different weapons. Swapping weapons, especially when you don't have time to fill up ammo, is a very useful gameplay mechanic, so getting into the habit of swapping becomes essential. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the shotgun. And wow, I'd probably call it the best, most powerful weapon in the game. It deals high damage and has the fastest reload animation for a shotgun I've ever seen. Seriously. Moving on, we are then greeted with our first ever boss battle of the game. A huge-assed barbed wire motherfucker with massive stumps for arms. Once you defeat the boss, you end up moving over to the next stage, which is set in the hospital. Now here is when the difficulty heats up just a little bit. You'll be encountering enemies which take a lot longer to kill than the last ones, so you'd better conserve your shotgun ammo. You'll even be locked in a room full of toxic gas at some point, facing off against even more bullet-resistant enemies. And it's timed! The hospital stage may be challenging, but you get to really appreciate the plethora of diverging paths at play here. This allows for a lot of replayability later down the line, if anyone were to ever revisit the paths they didn't pick.
That's another reference to House of the Dead, isn't it?
In fact, one of my favourite pathways leads you to this pitch black room, which reveals hordes of zombies every time the light flickers on. I thought that was a real treat for the eyes from a technical standpoint. Seeing something like this really wowed me, and goes to show how much care was put into this game. After touching a few panels, getting up the elevator takes you to the second boss, a robot dude with a missile gun for a hand. After giving the robot some much needed splash damage, Rob grabs the crowbar from its corpse. The crowbar, much like the pistol, is the only melee weapon you get in the game, and also the only weapon which does not have an ammo count. Which begs the question, why wasn't this weapon introduced from the start?
Like, seriously, Gordon Freeman's crowbar would have made the sewer levels a bit more bearable. But, on the other hand, I think I understand why the developers might have done this.
As you can see, you can easily spam the crowbar attack by rubbing the stylus backwards and forwards constantly, which causes the enemies to be stun locked. But let's continue. And now the third stage is on the rooftops, and it is probably the easiest stage out of the entire game. You'll mostly be fighting waves of bats, which can easily be dispatched in one shot of the pistol without needing the shotgun. Yup, one shot of the pistol and they are dead. Easy. You'll definitely need to conserve shotgun ammo though, as you'll be facing off against these bullet-sponging motherfuckers in the mines. Then, you're out of the mine and out onto the swamp, where you'll be facing off against zombies with arms over their face, as if preparing for a boxing match. All the better to knock out some arms, and not just their arms, you can shoot their legs and stomachs too, including headshots. Which leads us to another important mechanic of the game. At the end of every level, you are graded on how many body parts you blew off from each zombie. If the player knocks off the required amount of body parts, such as the head or the arms, they are rewarded with 2 extra lives. So therefore, it is in the player's best interest to add a lot of variation in their approach to the combat.
I think the idea of having amputation stats is such a genius move on the developers' part, because they managed to avoid a lot of repetition within their game design. Otherwise, we'd just be giving headshots all the time.
Continuing into the swamp, you run into a cabin and grab the fourth and final weapon, the machine gun. It basically feels like a nerfed out pistol but with a higher ammo capacity. However, since ammo for this gun became scarce, I ended up rarely using it, since you'd already be 3/4 into the campaign already. We are then thrust into our next boss battle, the Swamp Monster. I say this is probably the most challenging, but most satisfying boss battle out of the entire game. You shoot the weak point, which means you also have to avoid the slugs, kindly oblige the zombies by spamming the crowbar, grab the pistol to take out the bats. It will spew out this weird red shit, I don't know, which can be taken out with a single shot of the shotgun, rinse and repeat until the creature is fucking dead. We now move away from the swamp, first encounter the space aliens, drones, or whatever the fuck they're called, then enter inside the military base. Then, after passing through a circular track with a minecart, our good friend Rob calls for help. We get a response saying a chopper will be arriving in a few minutes, so we better not fuck around. But first, we have to do another boss battle. Ultron. Despite this being the final boss battle, it is honestly the easiest in the entire game. Move the minecart using the crowbar to dodge the rocks. Distract Ultron by using the pistol or machine gun. Ultron doesn't like that, so he pulls a giant metal pole up his ass, giving you the opportunity to shoot him in the back with the shotgun.
However, the game isn't over yet.
We finished the boss battle and, oh shit, we only got 5 minutes left, so it looks like we got another timed stage in our hands. This is what I would call the true boss battle of the game, where you have to fend off every single enemy before time runs out. Now, you are given plenty of ammo for this stage, but you'll be dealing with a lot of bullet sponges. I ended up failing the stage on my first try, so my advice would be to use the shotgun because of the high damage and faster reload. Trust me, by the time you finish this stage, you'll burn through a fuck ton of shotgun shells, enough to give Doom Guy a run for his money.
But once that's all done and dusted, it's not over yet.
You break open the door and it turns out we still need to wait for backup.
Wait a minute, so I actually had more time to spare? What the fuck?
I don't know. To be honest, the game should have ended there. Despite the whole runtime of the game being around, maybe 4 hours max, I'd say, I do personally find this drags out the runtime a bit too much. But once you clear out the zombies at the helipad, a cutscene plays where our hero, Rob, is saved. But is put in handcuffs because he is more dangerous than they thought, I guess, so... yeah. And the credits roll.
Well, looks like we reached the end of the game. So, what else has it got to offer? Quite a bit, actually.
In fact, you can collect these padlock symbols to unlock concept art. These are often found by shooting out panels or discovering secret pathways, which, again, encourages replayability. There's also a harder difficulty mode as well, with it being labelled as Furious mode. And Furious is right, because this only makes the challenge of reloading your weapon amplified even more. So, you better save up on those goddamned hearts.
Trust me, the harder difficulty of this game is really something else. So, what's the reward for beating it?
God? Are you fucking kidding me? This game has an even harder difficulty mode called God Mode? Just kidding, you unlock all weapons and have unlimited ammo, thus making the whole game a walk in the park.
This is obviously a reference to the God Mode cheat in the original Doom, so it's clear that the developers didn't just take nods from House of the Dead.
Yup, that's really all there is to it. If you are wanting some much needed catharsis after having your ass handed to you in Furious mode, then this is the mode for you. Now you can take out waves of zombies with ease, without worrying about wasting precious ammo. But, in all seriousness, this is actually a fun mode. After playing 5 minutes, you'd think you'd probably get bored from how easy everything has become. But no, I actually found this a lot of fun, and it's made all the more satisfying once you actually complete Furious difficulty. Or you could just input X, Y, right, left, and X, and you unlock everything. All modes, concept art, everything. Trust me, I know, I found it on the internet.
So, that's it, isn't it? Well, no. There's just one aspect of the game that I forgot to talk about. The multiplayer mode. Supports 2 players, in fact. But unlike Mario Kart, where you just needed 1 cartridge in order to play with 2 or more people, with this game, you need at least another cartridge for multiplayer to even work. So guess what I had to do? I went online and bought myself another copy.
Playing this game side by side with another person, like God Mode, adds yet another layer of fun to the experience. Fighting off waves of zombies with an additional companion at your side really helps to alleviate the difficulty, like covering for you while you try to reload with the touchscreen. Seriously, playing the exact same game over again, but with a second player, I really enjoyed. It's an awesome callback to the co-op experience in light gun games in the arcade. So there's definitely some nostalgic value to be had here. Well, one thing to note is that you'd better have great communication skills because limited ammo from the shotgun and machine gun is shared equally, meaning that you can run out very quick if you're not careful. I find it strange as rail shooters traditionally allowed special ammo to be allocated separately for each player, like in the Time Crisis series. It meant that each player could use special ammo at their own discretion without creating a disadvantage to the other. I reckon the fun factor would have been a lot better served if the sharing system was more suited for the Furious difficulty or taken out altogether.
Well, there you have it. A fun rail shooter for the Nintendo DS. Basically what House of the Dead would look like if it were ported on the Nintendo handheld. Although
the House of the Dead series was actually ported to a Nintendo console before, through the Nintendo Wii, with releases such as House of the Dead Overkill and a re-release of House of the Dead 2 and 3. The only official release of House of the Dead for the DS was an educational game called English of the Dead. However, this has obviously never made it outside of Japan, but the closest we ever get to the horror arcade classic on the go is through The Dead and Furious, or Touch the Dead, because that makes a lot more sense. The graphics, while basic, really add a lot of charm to the game, as if it were a beautiful homage to the original PlayStation. In summary, Dead and Furious is a really enjoyable title on the handheld, and one I would highly recommend for fans of House of the Dead or rail shooters in general. The enemy variety, point system, and extra content really make this easily one of the most replayable and enjoyable experiences I've ever had on the DS.
well, that's all I've got for the day, so don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.